Today we're going to be talking about Shiny Happy People Duggar Family Secrets. I finally finished the whole documentary and I definitely have a lot of things that I would like to say. And I thought it was going to be one video, but honestly, there were so many different things that I want to highlight and talk about that I think would make specific videos. And in order for this to not be extremely long, I'm going to break it up into a couple different videos for you guys. This video in particular is going to kind of be about Jill in this documentary and all of the things surrounding her. I'm going to be doing another one that's about some harder things to talk about because I was not expecting to cry watching this because I have looked into a lot of stuff with IBLP, a lot of the stuff with Duggar family, and a lot of it really hits you. Like it's really hard stuff to listen to, but the second episode in particular of this documentary, I feel like it just hit me and it was really hard for me to watch. We'll get into that in a separate video, but in this one, we're going to be talking about Jill's part in this documentary. Before I get into today's video, let me tell you guys a little bit about today's sponsor, which is Love and Pies. It's an incredibly fun mobile game. And if you guys know me, you know that I'm a sucker for them. And this one is no exception. It's so much fun. And I'm gonna tell you guys all about it because I'm pretty sure you're gonna wanna play it. Love and Pies is a free to download merge to mobile game that you can play on your mobile device or your tablet. The goal is to build a thriving business. You get to do this while combining baked goods, renovating your cafe, meeting a diverse cast of characters, solving mysteries, and it is so much fun. There's a mix of sitcom, telenovela, and cozy mystery. You get a little bit of drama, a little bit of gossip, all the things that we like here on this channel. Escaping into the world of Appleton is a wonderful way to relax and unwind and just have your you time. There's new story content that is released regularly, so there's always something new to do in the game. And then starting on June 19th, there's also going to be a Pride event going on. I love the element of merging your little desserts and drinks and stuff together to create other desserts and drinks while serving your customers. And this is such a fun way to get all of the coins that you need so that you can renovate your cafe and make it look however you want. Thank you so much, Love and Pies, for sponsoring this video. And if you guys would like to download it, which I highly encourage you guys to, it's so much fun, you can click the link in my bio, download it, and play it with me. And I first want to say, I really hope, and I think I said this in a previous video, I really hope that she wanted to do this documentary and didn't feel like she had to, but didn't really want to do it. My reason for saying that is that I feel like Jill has been put in positions, which we've seen in this documentary and heard about in the past, numerous occasions where she didn't want to do something, but either was forced to do it or felt like she had to do it. And I really hope that this wasn't one of those situations because I could tell in her scenes where she had to speak that it was extremely difficult for her to talk. I know that some of the things she went through were really triggering, so when the interviewers are asking her questions, like it was really difficult for her to speak. There was like a couple parts where Derek had to speak for her, or one in particular.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of don't really want to talk about all that. Just because, like...
We wish nobody had ever found out about any of
it's
that.
really hard for me because I'm just like...
Because it's your life.
There were certain things that, like, she shared with me in confidence because we were a married couple that, with all of our hopes, would remain confident between us until we both died and nobody would ever find out about it.
What's coming up?
This is something that, like, is heavily guarded and
nobody should have ever known about it, so I don't like talking about it. The moment that the reports, everything was released, that was the moment it was public.
Didn't want to talk about anything having to do with what Josh did, which is absolutely her right. I've known from the very beginning that she didn't want any of the stuff that came out in the police reports and all of that to be in the public. She didn't want people to know what happened. I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, those wounds being reopened over and over again, but also something so personal and so damaging and traumatic that you don't really want the whole world knowing about it. And unfortunately, we all know about it, and it helped people see Josh for who he is. And it really sucks that it came at the cost of hurting those girls. You know, it's being something that's still being talked about, I'm sure is like constantly reopening trauma. So, I want to say at the very beginning of this that I am very sorry to Jill that all of these things were put out there against her wishes, and I'm sure her other sisters didn't want any of this out there too. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to hear strangers talking about something that happened to you that you didn't even want them to know in the first place. And I just want to acknowledge for a moment that I know that has to be really difficult, and my purpose in these videos is definitely not to re-victimize Jill and her sisters or to make anybody feel bad over and over and over again or make them relive that trauma. It's to bring awareness to these types of situations because there are so many other young people that are in this cult and in families like this that are going through the same things that they did, and talking about it can help bring some other things to the surface, and it can actually help other people. I just want to say at the very beginning before I get into this, because I know that this documentary had to be very hard for her to be a part of. So we know and have gone over all of that stuff, but one of the things that this documentary highlighted that I felt was very, very important was it showed how Jill was treated and manipulated and used by her own father to keep this show going. And we have talked about this a little bit before, but I think there was so much that was said that even though I knew certain pieces of it, my jaw was still on the floor. Jim Bob laid out a contract in front of Jill and was like, sign this, and she trusted him. I mean, that's her dad. Like, she trusted him, so she went ahead and she signed it without looking deeper into the contract, realizing that whenever she didn't want to film, that her father was then going to later force her to film and be like, you actually have to film, you have to fly back to Arkansas and film these episodes and film for this show because you signed in this contract and said you would. A loving father would basically be like, no, my daughter's not gonna film, she doesn't want to, she's doing something in her life for her family that's important to her, and I'm not gonna make her put a pause on all of that and come all the way back over here to film something she doesn't want to do. But not Jim Bob. Jim Bob's like, no, you signed your life away in this contract, so you're going to come all the way back over here and you're going to film these episodes that you put in this contract that you were going to film. And
another interesting revelation was that Michelle and Jim Bob actually had their adult children sign contracts, 5-year contracts with TLC without telling them what was in the contract or what exactly they were. They also had to sign the contract, of course, for their children that were minors, but they included several children as minors on the contract that were not minors anymore, including Jill. She says for about 5 years, her parents were signing as if she was still a minor when she wasn't.
For years, she was never paid for anything that she did on the show, along with her other siblings. Not to mention, there was another contract where Michelle had signed for all of her children when some of them were no longer minors, which she signed them under the minor children. And there's something about seeing these contracts that just, it hits different, especially now that I have a son, because I can't imagine personally having a contract in front of me saying that I'm gonna film my child or have my child film, and I'm gonna then take the money that I got from him filming it and I'm just gonna sign his life away on this piece of paper and he has no say-so in any of it whatsoever. But that's what they did, and they not only signed it, but they signed for their children that weren't minors anymore, meaning those kids were old enough that they should have been able to make the decision for themselves on if they wanted to sign their name on those contracts. But Michelle went ahead and did it for them. So Jill and Derek ended up having to fly back from El Salvador, where they were doing missionary things, back to Arkansas to film for the show. And Derek was like, well, if we're gonna film, then we need to get something out of it, which, yeah, they should have been getting paid from the very beginning. Like, I used to watch this show because if you guys are unaware, if you haven't watched my first video about it, I live in the same area that they do. I've seen them on numerous occasions out in public. And so for me, being in the same area, knowing of who they were from being from here, and then seeing them, it was just very fascinating to then watch them on TV, and also seeing familiar places on the show, like, hey, I've been there, hey, I've eaten there before, I know where they're at, or I know where this person just got proposed to. It's just interesting seeing somewhere you're from when it's such a small area, like on TV. So I would watch the show, and I had no idea back when I was watching it that the ones that were older were not getting paid, and then the younger ones, you would think like a good parent would take the money that they were getting for being on the show and like put it in a savings for them so that they could go to college or, you know, get a vehicle when they need one or something, instead of Jim Bob just taking all of it and becoming a millionaire off his kid's back. flashbacks. Anyways, they had to fly back from El Salvador, and Derek's like, okay, well, if we have to come back, then we're gonna get something out of it. So then Jim Bob offered them basically minimum wage. It was like $10 an hour or something like that. I'll have to fact check. But he offered them basically nothing per hour to film an episode. What confuses me is that as a parent, you should want your children to do well. You should want them to be well off. And if I was a millionaire, you bet my kid would be doing just fine. I wouldn't be like, if you come back and you film this episode, I'll give you like minimum wage to film it while I take that much more. And also, he wouldn't tell them like what he was actually getting paid for their episodes. So he was trying to steal from his children, and he did. He stole from his kids. There's enough like bad things that Jim Bob's done, like running for Senate or whatever when Josh was on trial for looking at CP, or when he was speaking on trial for Josh refusing to say anything, acting like he didn't remember anything that happened to his own daughters in defense of Josh. Not only did he do those things, but then on top of that, he stole from his kids. And then there's still little ones that are in the house that are minors. He stole from all those children. Where are the repercussions for that? Why is it just like, hey, TLC and Jim Bob, we're gonna let this child labor fly? No, and not only did you make them work for you and film for you, but then you took the money that they earned away from them to keep it for yourself. That's greedy and disgusting. Also, his LLC or whatever it's called, Jim Bob's, is called Mad Family Inc. And I found that name to be so bizarre coming from how strict they are as a family that he would name it Mad Family. I don't know. Does anybody else think that's weird? I'm just kind of like, why'd you name it Mad Family? He is a lot like Bill Gothard, and they talk a lot about how Bill Gothard likes his abbreviations. So maybe Jim Bob likes his abbreviations, and Mad Family stands for something else. Misogynistic, abusive, dysfunctional. Maybe that's what Mad Family stands for. Also, they talked about in this documentary how Jill was a mercy giver. One of their strengths is that this gift equips them to reach out to people who are suffering, but who would likely be reluctant to tell others about their needs. So in order for you to be a mercy giver, you are basically there for everybody to dump everything that they need on you, dump their traumas on you, their needs and everything, but you're not gonna do that back. It says that mercy givers are attracted to people in distress, and they also said that that is a strength. One of the negatives, like the weaknesses to a mercy giver, it says the mercy giver's warmth can be falsely interpreted as personal, intimate affection. They must learn to temper their demonstration of affections based on the mindset of those to whom they are ministering. If they fail to do this, both parties may be led into temptation. It's always so bizarre to get on there and to read all of this stuff that these people just sat down on a computer and just typed up as fact. Like they're like, this is the way that it is, and this is the way that we're gonna tell it, and then everybody just listens to them. And then they give these kids these titles, and they're like, this is what you are. Like, it showed from, I think it was from the 14 and Pregnant Again episode. I could be wrong. It may have been a later episode. There's so many of them, I can't keep track. But one of their shows that they had, it showed that Jessa was the one who was supposed to do the laundry of everybody, of all the kids, of the parents, that was her job. Like we've already talked about on here about how they all had their duties and their chores and things like that. And then there's that weird stuff where Michelle will be like, once the baby's weaned, then we toss them off to the next oldest kid or whatever she said.
When the baby is born, it's my buddy until it's weaned. And then from there, it goes to the other buddy, whoever's turn it is to get a buddy.
To a child who's 11 years old raising a baby, and they just saw on TV, it touted as the buddy system. And nobody said, is anybody checking to see if that 11-year-old had some needs? That maybe she shouldn't have the baby in the bed with her? That maybe she needs school? I cannot emphasize enough how hurtful that is.
Basically, when she's no longer nursing her baby, here you go, you have them now. I'll be, screwing Bob in the back, and we're gonna be making some more babies, okay, to give to you. I've already said this before, when you have like all these kids, there is absolutely no way that you can form like a real connection and real bond with them. But it doesn't seem to bother them one bit. They're totally fine just tossing them off to the next child. And it's because, you know, of what they believe. Like Bill Gothard's like praising people for having more children and that you're listening to the Lord and keep having more babies. But like they talked about in the documentary, how Bill Gothard never got married and didn't have any kids. But meanwhile, he's like, y'all need to go out and have all these kids for me. I don't know, guys. I know we've talked about some of this before, but just the documentary showing some more in-depth things or hearing Jill talk about it again is just like the way that she was literally used on numerous occasions. Like I have talked about this on my channel before, but I'm just gonna say it again and refresh all of our memories about it since the documentary mentioned it as well. They literally canceled 19 Kids and Counting and then used the victims to get their ratings up. They're like, okay, well, we can't do 19 Kids and Counting anymore because people are mad at Jim Bob and Michelle, so we can't have a show that focuses on them anymore. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the 2 victims that were willing to or forced to come out and talk about it, and then we're gonna make the show their names, because everybody's totally gonna watch it then, because they're gonna be like, oh, those are 2 of Josh's victims. They used them. It's so sad. And you know, there are only 2 of the kids that have come out and spoke openly about what's been going on behind closed doors in that family. And when you look at all of them, like some of them seem to be following in the footsteps of their parents, like they're still deep within IBLP. And you can see these girls, they get married really young and all they know how to do is cook food, clean, and have babies, because that's what they were taught to do. They were literally diminished down to those 3 things. My next video on this documentary is going to be talking about the really difficult things that was in this documentary. I'm going to try and get through it without crying because nobody wants to hear that, but I'm not going to lie, there's some really tough stuff in this that made me sick. And when people tell me to have compassion to Jim Bob and Michelle, this next stuff I'm going to be talking about is exactly why I refuse to do that. I think that they're awful and I will scream it from the rooftops. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Did you guys watch this documentary? Let me know if you guys want that next video on the documentary. Give it a thumbs up. It lets me know that you guys would like to see it. If you're not subscribed, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, and I will be seeing you guys very soon for another video.